Chapter 5, looking at family problems, I want to begin by giving you the definition of family according to the United States Census Bureau. They define the family as a group of two or more persons that's related by blood, marriage, or adoption. And the sociological definition of what a family is a much broader definition which recognizes foster families, unmarried same-sex and opposite-sex couples, and any relationship that functions and feels like a family. In the United States, the marriage norm is monogamy, and this means one man, one woman at a time. There is a term called serial monogamy, and of course this is when a person divorces and remarries. They're only legally married to one person at a time, but you have exes out there. Monogamy is the only form that is universally recognized, and even in other societies where other forms exist, monogamy is the predominant form. We have what is known as polygamy. This is marriage to more than one spouse. There are two different types of polygamy. We've got polygyny and polyandry. Polygamy is where a man has more than one wife. Polyandry, a woman has more than one husband. It is quite rare, but in most cases where polyandry exists, the co-husbands are brothers. In most of the world, the work of the home is still primarily the responsibility of the wife. There was a study conducted on 13 different nations, and in every nation except one, which was Russia, the respondents reported that women performed most of the household labor. It was in 2001 that the Netherlands became the very first country in the world to offer legal marriage to same-sex couples. In 2003, Belgium became the second. So looking at some of the changing patterns in United States families, there is at the present time an increased singlehood and older age at first marriage. It seems like United States adults are staying single longer. They say today 13.8% of women and 20.4% of men aged 40 to 44 have never been married, which is the highest figures in United States history. Children are increasingly living in two-parent families that do not have legal recognition, which could result in denial of Social Security benefits, health care insurance, and much more. Some states, cities, counties, and employers are allowing unmarried couples to apply for what is known as a domestic partner designation, and this grants some legal entitlements such as health insurance and inheritance rights that have been traditionally reserved for married couples. They say that the percent of people who cohabited before marriage has more than doubled from 1980 to 2000. It went from 16% up to 41%. There's a new family form known as living apart together. These are known as commuter marriages, where couples live apart in different cities or states due to employment, but they would certainly generally prefer to live together. There has been an increase in births to unmarried women. In 2009, we reached a historic level in the United States at 40%. It seems that non-marital births has become more socially acceptable in 2011. 54% said that it was morally acceptable. Looking at the increased divorce in blended families, at today's rate, an estimated 1/2 of all marriages started are projected to end in divorce. It is estimated that 1/4 of all children that are born in the United States will live with a step-parent before they reach adulthood. Employment of married women with children over or under 18 has risen from the 1950s. It rose from 24% up to 71% in 2010. 58% of married couple families with children have 2 employed parents. Public attitudes toward changes in family life. There's a list of them here. United States are sharply divided in their judgments about changes in the family. About 1/3 of adults accept the changes in family life. About 1/3 of adults support only interracial marriage and smaller families. And of course, 1/3 of adults are skeptical of all the changes. Now, I want to briefly mention the sociological theories on family problems. Looking at it from the structural functionalist perspective, the family is a social institution that performs important functions for society, including producing new members, regulating sexual activity, socializing the young, providing physical and emotional care for family members. And we can go on and on and on with certainly some more of the important functions of the family. The conflict perspective focuses on the impact of capitalism, social class, and power on marriages and families. There is a term that you need to be familiar with, and that's patriarchy. And this is the traditional male domination of families. And of course, feminist theory does focus on how gender inequalities influence and are influenced by marriages and families. And feminists tend to be very critical of patriarchy. The symbolic interactionist perspective is concerned with how labels affect meanings and behavior. To give you an example, class, the concept visitation rights, it implies visitor status, and it tends to minimize the importance of the non-custodial parent's role. So the symbolic interactions perspective is useful in understanding the dynamics of domestic violence and abuse. In the United States, people are more likely to be physically assaulted, abused, and neglected, sexually assaulted and molested, and killed in their own homes and by other family members than anywhere else or by anywhere else. The rate and severity of physical violence does tend to be higher among cohabiting couples compared with dating and marital partners. There are 4 patterns of partner violence that has been identified. One is common couple violence. This is where you have an occasional violent act that arises from an argument. It kind of gets out of hand, but it usually doesn't escalate into a serious or life-threatening violence. Intimate terrorism is violence that's motivated by a wish to control one's partner. It involves the systematic use of economic subordination, threats, isolation, verbal, emotional abuse, and other control tactics. And this one is most often committed by men. Violent resistance, this is acts of violence that are committed in self-defense. It's almost exclusively committed by women against men. And then we have mutual violent control, which is a rare pattern of abuse that could be viewed as two intimate terrorists battling for control. Why do some adults stay in abusive relationships? Class, there's a whole list here of some compelling reasons as to why people stay in abusive relationships. But the most important reason that has been reported by women is the fear of loneliness. Child abuse refers to the physical or mental injury, sexual abuse, negligent treatment or maltreatment of children under the age of 18 by a person who is responsible for the child's welfare. The most common form of child maltreatment is neglect, and this is where there is a failure to provide adequate attention and supervision, maybe food and nutrition, hygiene, medical care, and a safe and clean living environment. The highest rates of victimization are age birth to 1 year in children with disabilities and some minority children. And the perpetrators are most often parents of the victim. Elder abuse includes physical, psychological, and financial abuse and neglect. The most common form of elder abuse is neglect, such as failure to provide health and hygiene needs, such as clean clothes, doctor visits, medication, adequate nutrition, unreasonable confinement, isolation, lack of supervision, and abandonment. Older women are far more likely than older men to suffer from abuse and neglect, and most cases of elder abuse does occur in a domestic setting. The most likely perpetrators are the adult children, followed by other family members and spouses and intimate partners. Some parents are victimized by their children's violence, ranging from hitting, kicking, biting, to being pushed down the stairs, using a weapon to inflict serious injury or even kill a parent. More violence is directed against mothers than against fathers, and sons to be more violent toward parents than the daughters are. In most cases of children being violent toward their parents, parents have been violent toward the children. Sibling abuse is the most prevalent form of abuse in families. In class, even sexual abuse occurs in sibling relationships. We also have pet abuse, because a lot of people view their pets as family members. They can certainly be considered victims of family violence. In class, I want to say that abusers do often threaten their pets with violence.